All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another podcast episode. Today, we're going to be discussing all of the action from the weekend, including Ben Whittaker, Emiliano Vargas, and that headlining attraction of Jaron Ennis versus Xander Zayas. We're going to go through the breaking news. Alexander Usyk making the most waves over there. We're going to do my moments of the week, and then we're going to round up previewing next weekend's action, which is Abdullah Mason versus Albert Bell. A bit of a change there, but we're going to talk about all of that. Make sure before we get into it that you do like the video, subscribe to the channel. It does help a massive amount. All right, we're going to go back almost a week now and quickly talk about Paro and Lewis Crocker. Paro winning unanimously, 115 to 113 on all three scorecards. A very, very good performance by Paro. A sound game plan from him to never plant your feet, constantly moving, speedy combinations, and then continuously pivot. Go back into the center of the ring. Make Lewis Crocker chase you. And within 4 rounds, we saw Paro throwing over 400 shots and Lewis Crocker, throwing it around 200. And I think that sort of emphasizes the way in which both of these fighters approached it. I think Lewis Crocker, poor game plan, number one. You go off that fight that he had against Paddy Donovan in the rematch. Lewis Crocker's all over him for the first half of the fight. Second half of the fight, he falls asleep. Very close decision. This fight here, he comes in asleep, wakes up halfway through, and then actually has a very good run at the back end of that fight. You look at the scorecards, 115 to 113. If Lewis Crocker had snatched a round or two early instead of coming in the way he did, we're going to be looking at a very different decision. Now, I think one of the big pivotal roles in this win, all right, and I don't want to take anything away from Paro. I think it's a very, very good win. Becomes 2 division world champion, the second Australian of all time to do that behind Jeff Fenech. What happened in that fight was, if that fight took place in Ireland, I don't think Paro becomes world champion. I think being down under, having that crowd noise every time you do something good or bad, whether you land your shot or miss, the crowd erupts. Every time Lewis Crocker does anything, whether it's good or bad, a pin drop. And I think that plays a big role in how the judges see the fight, how they score it, because Lewis Crocker was on the front foot for the majority of that fight. He was the one being the hunter. I don't want to take anything away from Paro, but I think Paro has to thank No Limit for spending all that money to bring that fight here, because I think if that's in Ireland, if that's in the UK, Paro is not and new. Good performance by Paro. I think against a top boxer in this division with the power, I'm still not 100% on this Paro is going to win it. Like in that back end of that fight, once again the eye takes a whole heap of damage. 11 and 12, he's running away, just trying to hold on and see the final bell. That was in a fight that, for me, he was quite dominant for the first half of that fight, and he was still winning rounds in the sort of latter stages of it. I'm just not convinced 100% Paro works in this division. That's my biggest criticism on Paro. That's what I was worried about when he came into this fight. Look, all credit to him. Game plan was spot on. I love the quick combinations. I love pivoting back into the middle of the ring. I think him and DiCarlo set something up, knew how Lewis Crocker was going to come in, and put together a great game plan of defeating that. Like, I don't want to take anything. And I've always been this guy that says Paro is a top-level boxer. It's the power hitting. It's what you can take from the power of other fighters. Because Paro in there against Keyshawn Davis, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, I believe they can land a cleaner, crisper, harder-hitting shot than Lewis Crocker. And they're better boxers than what Lewis Crocker is. And that does worry me. What's next for Paro? Because the guy has deserved, 2 division world champion is an unbelievable feat. And 2 Australians have ever done this, him and Jeff Fenech. So don't take this achievement lightly at all. A very good win from Paro. What's next for him? I keep hearing Manny Pacquiao. I keep hearing No Limit talk Manny Pacquiao, which makes a whole lot of sense. You can get him in Australia. He's a big draw. People are going to pay to watch him. Whether he's old or not, people are going to pay in Australia to watch him. So it makes sense. And he'll come out here. For me, I want to see Paro win a bigger fight than that. Because I think you go in there and you spark out Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's just old. That's what you were supposed to do. If you look poor and win, Paro looked shit in that fight. A bit like what they did about Mario Barrios. And by the way, I think Mario Barrios lost to Manny Pacquiao. So for Paro, I think that's the fight he's going to take. Look, he deserves a big payday. He deserves a big event in Australia. I get all that. I would personally, selfishly, I'd personally like to see Paro in there trying to unify, trying to go up against someone like a Keyshawn Davis, a Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez / Rolly Romero, any of these names alike. The problem with them is if you want to unify those belts, you're going to have to go over there. You're going to have to be the B side. And it's not what Liam Paro wants to do right now in his career. And I get that. And unfortunately, apart from Manny Pacquiao, I can't really think of any big names that can be a star attraction to be brought out here and have a bigger event than what Manny Pacquiao will. It's not the fight that I want to see, but I think it's the fight that we're going to get. Zuffa Boxing, Jose Valenzuela. Rayo gets his revenge, stopping Edward de los Santos in the second round of their rematch. Obviously, we all saw what happened in that first fight between Jose Valenzuela and Edward de los Santos. This fight here, I thought De Los Santos was going to get the win, and boy was I wrong, because Valenzuela, he had him hurt with a clean left hand at the end of the first round. Come into the second round, they're trading in the pocket, and lands a picture perfect right hook whilst they're trading to just knock him over. Like Edward de los Santos ends up curled up on the floor. A brutal knockout and a great win from Jose Valenzuela. Ben Whittaker stops Richard Rivera in round 2. Good performance by Ben Whittaker. This one here, a lot of people had question marks about how he was going to go. Richard Rivera was tested at a level, but it was one of these. I always hate when we talk about tested fighters where their biggest achievement is a loss. Like coming into this, it's Richard Rivera, 29 fights, hasn't been stopped, went to a decision with Badu Jack, but lost. All right, his other fight might have been a draw or something. And it's like, all right, that's all good. But, what do we actually think of Badu Jack? That's like another question. Like, what do we think of Badu Jack? And I don't particularly think of him that highly, if I'm being honest. I think Badu Jack is quite a good boxer. He's not a great champion. He's not an outstanding fighter. He doesn't have unbelievable power. Ben Whittaker came in here. I tipped him to get a stoppage victory. I didn't think he was going to do it that quick. That's where I give him credit. I didn't think he was going to do him that quick. Richard Rivera got run through. The knockdown at the end of the first round was a bit soft, I thought. On all the angles, it looks a bit soft, but he sort of pushes him down, cup to the back of the head. It's definitely a landing shot, but I don't know how much power it was in. But that one where he draws him in and lands that flush left hook, that is brilliant boxing from Ben Whittaker. And we know he's got that. But I still think Ben Whittaker, I want a step up for him. All right, Richard Rivera, like I said, he was tested to a level, but I didn't particularly rate him. I still thought Ben Whittaker should go in there and get a stoppage. Ben Whittaker, we've got so many different fighters around that sort of, I feel like we protect them or look at them differently. Like Ben Whittaker is an Olympian. He's now 28 years age. Let's see him in some big fights. And I've got some listed right here. I think Conor Wallace for Ben Whittaker. I think Ben Whittaker versus Conor Wallace. Conor Wallace is a good fighter. And I think Ben Whittaker up against him, it's got a lot to offer because you beat him, you become outright IBF #1. That's why I've got Conor Wallace there. And I still think it's a better fight than what Richard Rivera is. I think it's a step up. I think Conor Wallace will give Ben Whittaker a test. The other people that I have listed here that I would like to see, if he's going to be fighting Birmingham in October, that's what we're hearing, Birmingham in October, and then he wants to have a world title fight next year. If you're having a world title fight next year, this one in October has to be a big one. This one in October needs to be a tough fight. Imam Khatiev, I think that's a very good fight. I think that's a very, very good fight. Imam Khatiev, he's going to walk you down. He's going to throw big punches. He's going to be a handful all night, and he's not easy to handle. Other ones that I have, Zach Chelly, Anthony Yard, Willie Hutchinson, Zach Parker, Craig Richards. Plenty of names there, and I'm probably missing more English ones than that. But I think that's a good handful of names to pick from. You want to fight in England, go and fight one of these English stars. Anthony Yard, he's been in world title fights. Zach Chelly, you just saw what he did to David Morrell. Willie Hutchinson and Zach Parker. I know Zach Parker's coming off a loss. The reason I like the Zach Parker and Willie Hutchinson one is because they offer something completely different in a fight against Ben Whittaker. Ben Whittaker, if he goes IBF #1 or something like that and he ends up fighting Dimitri Bivol, he's not going to have the same sort of fight that he's going to have with a Liam Cameron and these other people that he's been facing because Dimitri Bivol is so difficult to hit. And I think you get that with Willie Hutchinson. I think you get that with Zach Parker. You get two guys that don't really like to interact. They won't walk you down. They won't spend time in the pocket. At times, Ben Whittaker will have to chase them around. Ben Whittaker will have to find a different way. He's not going to be able to walk them onto a big shot like he just did to Richard Rivera. it's gonna be a completely different fight. And I like that to see how Ben Whittaker can handle somebody that is a mover, somebody that is a runner, somebody that is going in and out of the pocket like a Willie Hutchinson will, like Zach Parker will. And obviously there's those other names. Connor Wallace, if you want to be IBF number one. Imam Khatib, if you just want a tough fight. I'm happy to see any of those fights. Emiliano Vargas stops Bryce Mills in round 4. Very similar way of that fight ending to the Ben Whittaker one. Emiliano Vargas hurts him with sort of almost a nothing cupping shot at the end of round 3, coming to round 4, and Emiliano Vargas walks him onto a brutal straight left hand that just crumples him instantly, and a great win for Emiliano Vargas. He's somebody that, he's got, I think Emiliano Vargas has basically everything you could ask for. Like, he just went into that fight against Bryce Mills and he said, fuck it, we're going to fight southpaw today. We're going to do this whole entire, I know I'm an orthodox fighter, I know I can switch, but I think I'm just going to fight the whole thing southpaw just to get used to fighting as a southpaw. Like, that's how talented this guy is. He's got the name, he's got the looks, he's got the age, like, he's 22 years of age. He's on a great, he's winning every single fight clearly. He hasn't had to step up. I get that. But he's at one of these stages where I look at Emiliano Vargas and say, you've got absolutely everything. When is go time? You look at Abdullah Mason. He's a world champion at this age. When is go time? You look at Moses Atauma. He's about to take Filip Hrgović at that age. Emiliano Vargas has heaps and heaps of experience at his young age. He's very, very talented. He's in a smaller weight category. I think I'm sick of seeing people like Bryce Mills. I think I want to see a step up. I think I want to see somebody that might be a former world champion, somebody that's been in a world title level fight and been competitive in it. That's what I want to see from Emiliano Vargas. I want to see him tested, because he wasn't tested in this fight against Bryce Mills. He was very, very good. I like the rips to the body. Like I said, fought the whole entire thing southpaw, which I wasn't expecting, but it's nice to see that he's going to be able to switch stances like that, fight, possibly become a type of O'Shaquie Foster, Bud Crawford, this type of, all right, I'm happy with both stances. I'm happy to trade. All right, I'm happy to go southpaw, orthodox, southpaw, whatever you want, switch it up. But I do think that the step up needs to come soon. All right, let's talk about the main one. Xander Zayas getting absolutely run through from Jaron Ennis. A brilliant performance from Jaron Ennis. I think when you look at Ennis's performance against Xander Zayas and you say, all right, what's next for Jaron Ennis? It's Virgil Ortiz or Sebastian Fundora. Those are the two names we're hearing. We're going to get to that. Let's talk about the fight first. One round, one slip up from Jaron Ennis. And that was in round 3 when he gets caught from a nice combination from Xander Zayas. Xander Zayas hitting between punches, catching Jaron Ennis. And obviously there's questions there about the chin of Ennis, the way he took those punches. He was holding on for dear life, but I think Jaron Ennis, he's going to be that fighter. He's going to get clipped, and it's how you handle being clipped. The fact is, Jaron Ennis didn't hit the floor. The fact is, Jaron Ennis kept going back in the pocket to trade with him after being hurt. There's even a segment during that 3rd round where Xander Zayas throws 4 or 5, 6 hooks at Jaron Ennis, and he's like Neo from the Matrix, just going, and every single punch misses. And you got to have your wits about you. You got to be able to, know whereabouts you are. So obviously he wasn't that hurt to be able to defend like that. Hands down, head and body movement, dodging all the punches. And I think that one slip up in that fight. And we're talking about Jaron Ennis stepping up to face the unified champion in that division. And you had one slip up, which didn't really cost you anything. That was the only round you lost. You come straight back out and win the next round. And in that fight, you drop the guy 3 times and finish him in the 7th. People I've seen criticizing him very, very, very harshly online for some of the stuff in that fight. And I can't work out why. What else did you want the guy to do in that fight? Yes, there's a few fragilities there that we saw. We did see him get caught. We did see him get wobbled. But shouldn't we focus on how he recovered from that and what he went to do after that? The fact he didn't touch the canvas, the fact that he went straight back into trade with the guy, the fact that the next round or the round after he drops him again. I think it was a brilliant performance from Jaron Ennis. And if you talk about what he did well in that fight, you just can't handle the speed. The speed, the combinations, and that power that he's bringing up to this weight, Xander Zayas couldn't handle it. And it's, when I look at him, you can make almost a direct translation between him and David Benavidez, right? If we look now what Jaron Ennis is going to do next, if it's going to be Virgil Ortiz, if that's going to be Sebastian Fundora, one of those fighters, you look at how David Benavidez went up against Zurdo Ramirez. Zayas Ramirez wasn't, finished in that fight because of the power alone. It was the speed that Dave Benavidez was able to hit him. And I feel like when you look at Jaron Boots versus Virgil Ortiz, it's the same thing. Yes, Virgil Ortiz is very good on the inside. Yeah, he can take a punch. But Zayas Ramirez is very good on the inside, and he can take a punch. But it's the speed that kills. It's the fact that you're standing there, and this guy's just hit you 4 or 5 times before you've been able to throw one. And that's what Jaron Boots did to Xander Zayas, and it's what I think he's going to do to Virgil Ortiz. Everyone's talking, all right, we saw in that fight, Jaron Boots got caught in the 3rd round. Virgil Ortiz hits harder. Virgil Ortiz is better on the inside than what Xander Zayas is. So is Sebastian Fundora. So what are you going to do when you come up against one of those guys? I don't think that Virgil Ortiz is quick enough to land that punch. I think the distance control from Jaron Boots stepping inside and outside of the pocket, as well as landing those quick combinations with the power that he's got on him on the defense of someone like Virgil Ortiz, I think there's only one winner. I think it's Jaron Boots. And for me, I have put Jaron Boots in my top 10. I'm still going back and forth where I want to sit him, right? At first, I put him in 10th, and then I redid it all, and I put him at about 6th. Either way, he's a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter. And when you come up against Virgil Ortiz, has Virgil Ortiz been in there of someone of the level of Jaron Boots? Has he fought somebody that can fight in the pocket like Jaron Boots can? I think every time you see Virgil Ortiz, like you look at that Madrimov fight, you don't say Madrimov is a great inside fighter. You say he's a good boxer, but he was drawn into a fight against Virgil Ortiz on the inside. Well, this time he's not going to have to go looking because Jaron Boots will be right there. And I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. But I think what I saw from Jaron Boots against Xander Zayas beats Virgil Ortiz. I think he's just too quick, and the power on top of the speed is what's going to kill you. And I think he's going to do that. And I think against Sebastian Fundora, if Fundora does want to have that inside fight, we know how much he likes to fight on the inside. It's different. It's very, very different. It's a different task. But I think the fragilities in the body of Sebastian Fundora with Jaron Boots under him is another problem altogether. I think it's a more dangerous fight, though. I think Sebastian Fundora can hurt Jaron more than Virgil, because I think Sebastian Fundora is quicker. Those long, rangy arms helps a whole heap. I think Sebastian Fundora is a bigger danger to Jaron than what Virgil Ortiz is, which I actually didn't think I would say. I thought Virgil Ortiz was a good test for Sebastian Fundora, and I think competitive between those two. If those two fought, I think it's a very competitive fight, and I can't tell you who wins that one, but I'm telling you, Sebastian Fundora, I think, is a more favorable matchup against Jaron Boots than what Virgil Ortiz is. I think Sebastian Fundora has a better chance of beating Jaron than what Virgil does, from what I've seen. Great performance by Jaron beating Xander Zayas like that. I think what made it so impressive was the way he did it. I think I said I thought Jaron Boots would win by a decision, and I was quite comfortable with that. I thought he's very, very good. He's very, very talented, but I just think Xander Zayas is going to try and box from the outside. Jaron Boots is not going to have that many times to fight on the inside. Stupid game plan from Zayas in the end to try and fight him on the inside. Like, very fucking stupid. But Jaron Boots to drop him 3 times the way he did, that uppercut that he lands in the 5th, that was fucking brutal. That was such a good fucking punch, man. And credit to Xander Zayas. You got to give him credit. A lot of courage, a lot of heart to see the end of that 5th round, to go through the 6th, to come out to the 7th. He wasn't the one that called off the fight. It was the physician telling the referee to call a halt. I know Xander Zayas has taken a bit of slack online for taking a knee, which I think is fucking pathetic, right? And I saw it from Virgil Ortiz. I saw Virgil Ortiz dissing Xander Zayas, and I'm like, Virgil, you were too much of a pussy to get in the ring in the first place against him. Why are you now dissing Xander Zayas? I thought showing a lot of heart, getting up once in the first round, having a good round 3, a brutal round 3, right? They both had success. Even Jaron Boots landed a nice punch at the end of the 3rd. Getting up after that uppercut in the 5th, when you've taken an absolute pounding the past few rounds, going through the 6th, coming out for the 7th, telling the doctor, telling the referee that you want to continue. And then obviously, yeah, he does take a knee. He just gets overwhelmed. There's just too much going on. But I think to diss Xander Zayas for the effort, at 23, unified champion chose to take that type of test. You got to be kidding yourself to be dissing a guy like that, because, yeah, he lost. But I have so much more respect for Xander Zayas for taking that challenge, for pushing himself, for having that fight, than these guys that sit on the sidelines and talk all this shit, and then when push comes to shove, they dodge the fight. So all credit to Xander Zayas for taking it. And look, he was beaten on the night by a better fighter, a more experienced fighter. And I think that does play a big role in that fight. I think Jaron Ennis, at his age, with the experience, 30 plus fights, he's 12 more fights than Xander Zayas. He showed the experience, he showed the speed. And I think Xander Zayas, you give him a few more years, what he learns from that experience as well, he's going to go far. And one thing that you can say about Xander Zayas is it's a tough guy to stop. You have to really put this guy through to stop him, which is a very, very good attribute to have. All right, let's talk about some of this breaking news. Rolly Romero and Teofimo Lopez have agreed to a deal to fight for Romero's WBA welterweight title. The fight is being targeted for August 22nd in Las Vegas. I think Teofimo Lopez beats Rolly Romero. If I'm being honest, I think Teofimo Lopez has so much more to offer than what Rolly Romero does. Rolly Romero is a world champion because he beat a Ryan Garcia that didn't turn up. I think Teofimo Lopez, people are going to look at this fight and think it's more competitive than it is because Teofimo Lopez just got his ass handed to him from Shakur Stevenson. But I think stylistically, Teofimo Lopez is going to be able to do stuff to Rolly Romero that Rolly Romero is not going to be ready for. Rolly Romero's got a good power punch. He's a good boxer. Good. I don't think he's anything spectacular. I think Teofimo Lopez is a very, very good boxer. And when he's on new weight, I think he's just going to be able to pick Rolly Romero off. I think it's going to be that easy. I think Teofimo Lopez wins this and wins this quite comfortably. All right, unless for some reason he eats one big punch from Rolly Romero and at welterweight he can't hack it, I think Teofimo Lopez wins this fight. And I think people will underestimate Teofimo Lopez's ability because of that fight against Shakur Stevenson. Dimitri Bivol to undergo elbow surgery on July 4th, then return to face Callum Smith. Didn't realize that he was injured. I don't know what the elbow surgery is actually trying to resolve, but I'm at a point now where I just don't think we're going to see Bivol Beterbiev 3. And if we do, I don't think it's going to be competitive. I don't think it's going to be the fight that we want it to be. And that's what it gets me to a point where it's like, do we want to see it at all then? Let's just leave it a draw. I'd prefer a draw, 1-1, than have a shocking third fight and then still be like, yeah, you won, but Beterbiev is like fucking 50 now. Or Dimitri Bivol's just had 4 lots of surgery and he doesn't perform. If you go in there and you perform very, very well against Callum Smith and you beat him and we see Artur Beterbiev do something very, very good against another top-level fighter, yeah, more than happy. But if we're going to see him undergo elbow surgery in July, all right, you give him a few months out, maybe he faces Callum Smith in October, maybe November. All right, so we're looking at taking Artur Beterbiev later next year, maybe February to March, May, April, maybe. Artur Beterbiev at that point will be 43 because his birthday's like in January. Yeah, you sort of get to a point where I'm starting to lose interest. I'm starting to lose interest in talking about it. I think Dimitri Bivol versus Callum Smith is a high-octane, very, very good quality fight, but I think Dimitri Bivol wins it. If Dimitri Bivol fights how we know he can, if he's not hampered by the back injury and this elbow surgery now, yeah, Dimitri Bivol wins it. Lester Martinez to defend his interim WBC title against Luka Plantic on August 29th. Joe Cordina is out his July 4th fight with Abdullah Mason due to visa issues. Now, we'll talk about this in 2 segments. So he's out due to visa issues. Abdullah Mason will now face 28-0 Albert Bell. Albert Bell was supposed to be fighting Andy Cruz July 18th. On top of this, Joe Cordina has been charged with assault and threatening a person with an offensive weapon following an incident outside a Cardiff petrol station earlier this year. So that incident is the reason he had his visa denied. We're going to talk about Abdullah Mason and Albert Bell's fight in the preview later, so stay tuned for that. I don't know what's going on personally with Joe Cordina. Do I think Abdullah Mason versus Albert Bell is a better or worse fight? I think it's just about on par. I don't think there's much difference in quality in that fight, if I'm being completely honest. I still think we're going to get a very, very good fight. So I'm not too worried about Joe Cordina coming out. They found a very good replacement. His replacement was getting ready to face somebody, so he's going to be in shape. Yes, tactically, he's going to have to change everything up because he's going to be taking on Abdullah Mason instead of Andy Cruz, but I still think a high-level fight. The WBA has named Gervonta Tank Davis the lightweight champion in recess and ordered Floyd Schofield and Lucas Barty to fight for the division's now vacant title. Yeah, that's what you got to be. If you're the WBA, if you're any governing agency, if your fighter is not taking the fights, if he is not active, take the fucking belts off him. I think the fact that Tank Davis already still has this belt up until now was a poor decision. He should have been stripped ages ago. In fact, Lamont Roach should have it. Alexander Usyk has vacated his belts, and Eddie Hearn says he's going to be taking on Deontay Wilder, and Alexander Usyk is saying that he's going to be taking on John Jones. Johnny Bones Jones. I can't believe that. I was astounded when I saw that name. I got the Wilder thing. That's the name I said originally. I says he's going to take on Wilder. It's the fight he wanted before Rico. It's the fight he'll go back for. It's the American fight. It's that fight he wants. It all made sense to me. And then he pulled out Johnny Jones. And I can't believe that name is coming up. In terms of, do I prefer to see John Jones or Wilder? I'd probably prefer to see John Jones. I think it's more entertaining. I think he beats Wilder. I think Wilder is so past it. John Jones is such a weird one because I think John Jones is probably a worse boxer than what Rico Verhoeven is, right? But John Jones, I don't personally like John Jones, all right? I personally think he's a scumbag and a cheat. But if we talk about his athletic ability and his combat sports ability, he is one of the greatest you'll ever see. We're talking about a John Jones that in the prime of his career did not train, did not get out of bed, was doing all sorts of partying, drugs, all sorts of shit, and still went in there and beat the ass of Alexander Gustafsson in a world title fight. John Jones is a phenomenal, phenomenal fighter. And I don't think discipline's going to matter because he's got a great fighting brain. I've seen him break down fights. I've seen him talking about it in training. I've seen him talk about it in seminars. The guy's got a very, very elite combat sports brain, and that's what he's going to need in this fight. Alexander Usyk looked absolutely dreadful against Rico Verhoeven. So if that's the type of Alexander Usyk, yeah, I don't think John Jones is going to get his ass handed to him. I don't think he's as good a boxer as Rico Verhoeven. He's not going to be able to do some of the stuff he does in MMA, all right? Some of the dark arts that he does in MMA. But I still think it's a competitive fight. And if I'm being honest, I think I'd prefer to see John Jones in. I think John Jones versus Alexander Usyk, pure entertainment factor, is a better watch than what Wilder versus Usyk is. If we're a boxing purist, if we're saying who should Usyk fight between those two, you're going to say Wilder because at least Wilder is a former world champion boxer. But yeah, I actually don't. If I have to choose between Wilder and John Jones, I'm probably choosing John Jones. Let's talk about those vacant titles because Agit Kabayel has been promoted to the WBC outright heavyweight champion, and I can't be more happy for Agit Kabayel. Obviously, I'm a big sort of person on let's not promote people. Give Agit Kabayel a fight, make him fight the number 2 and the number 3 contender, make you win that belt. A bit like Fabio Woodley. He was a world champion, and he lost his world title without winning a world title fight. And that's what I don't like. That's the one thing I would say. I think Agit Kabayel should be fighting for the world title instead of giving it. He's the right name to be given it. If somebody has to be given it, obviously Agit Kabayel. I'm a bit upset we're not going to see Kabayel versus Alexander Usyk. But at the same time, Alexander Usyk has done everything in the world that he needs to do to deserve to retire on his own terms. Some people are really pissed off about it. I think Alexander Usyk, what he did at cruiserweight, what he did at heavyweight, he's one of the greatest of this generation. And I think one thing people forget is this isn't an Alexander Usyk that was defending his world titles against bums or people that he chose in the Ukraine, taking the home advantage. This is a guy that went on the road every single time and beat Daniel Dubois, beat Tyson Fury, beat Tony Bellew, beat Derek Chisora, beat Anthony Joshua. Everybody that he had to fight, he was basically fighting them all in their own backyard. He went to England and beat every single top English fighter, world champion, and everything else in between. So if this is the way he wants to retire, fair enough, because you take that fight against Agit Kabayel, you beat him, you probably don't get the credit. Well, Agit Kabayel wasn't tested. He wasn't in there with a former world champion. He hasn't been a world champion. Whereas Daniel Dubois, he beat world champions. He beat former world champions. Tyson Fury did. Anthony Joshua did. Agit Kabayel hasn't done that yet. So people are going to discredit it. You lose to Agit Kabayel, all of a sudden, Alexander Usyk, he's tanked his resume, he's ruined his career and all this shit. Well, you don't need that. I think Alexander Usyk has done everything in his career that he needs to do. Unfortunately, Agit Kabayel doesn't get that opportunity. But now it's time for him to pave his own way. And when we look at the WBC, if they're going to mandate a fight for him, I don't know who the fuck they're going to pick, if I'm being honest. And I think we're going to see the problem now in the next 12, 18, 24 months of what the heavyweight division is. Because we've just seen Frank Sanchez elevated to the, he hasn't been, but he is IBF number 1 title contender. So he's going to be either in a world title fight or he's going to be given it. Frank Sanchez got his ass handed to him, to Agit Kabayel. But Agit Kabayel, you look at the top 5. All right, he's champion. You got Fury, followed by Okoli, followed by Atauma, followed by Hrgovic, followed by Joshua. So Fury should be retired. Okoli, good fight. I like the Okoli fight. Atauma's taking on Hrgovic, so one of those guys is going to be a loser, so you're not going to be facing one of those. Atauma is 21, and he's going to be fighting, for a different world title. He's going to be fighting for Daniel Dubois / Fabio Wardley's world title, or Anthony Joshua. So 2 of those guys are fighting, Atauma, Hrgovic. 2 of them are talking about fighting each other, Fury and Joshua. Those 2 should be retired by now, and the last one's Lawrence Okoli, who's not tested in this division. And that's the sort of the problems that we're going to start seeing in this division. Because I don't know, do they give Agit Kabayel you choose who you fight? Because what are we going to do? Make you fight Lawrence Okoli? The WBC will say, well, let's see if we can get a bigger money fight. You just pick who you want to face, and yeah, we'll try and run with it. But there is a problem for depth right now in the heavyweight division. I like Agit Kabayel. I think Agit Kabayel versus Fury, Okoli are possibilities. I think Agit Kabayel versus the winner of Fury versus Joshua is a possibility. If Atauma beats Hrgovic, like I said, he's going to go face Daniel Dubois. But, Moses Atauma might say, well, I have to still wait for Fabio Wardley and Daniel Dubois. They're going to fight later this year. It's going to be a long time. Agit Kabayel, I'm right here. Let's do this fight. It's a big money fight. We can do it in the UK. We'll sell out a massive stadium. So it is a problem, but look, Agit Kabayel, he's got some choices to make. The WBC have some choices to make, but he is now a world champion fighter. The WBO president, Gustavo Olivieri, has confirmed that the WBO super middleweight champion, Hamza Shiraz, will be permitted a voluntary title defense. People are fucking fuming about that. And I get it, because he couldn't have been given an easier opportunity to win a title. Like, he ran through Alan Begich. We all knew he would. That's what he did. Give him a hard test. Give him a big fight. What are we doing here? Why are we, look, Hamza Shiraz, unlucky, because he should have been facing Diego Pacheco in that world title fight, right? And Diego Pacheco ducked it. Well, you can't do anything about that. But I would like to see Hamza Shiraz go and take on a Lester Martinez, all right? Oislis Iglesias, go and do a unification fight. Why do you have to have a voluntary defense, an easy defense? Go and unify. You get to choose. Oislis Iglesias, here's a massive opportunity, massive card in the UK. Come fight me, unify titles. It's all on the line. That's what I want to see from Hamza Shiraz, because he's good enough. All right, and he's got the ability. Him and Andy Lee are an amazing, amazing duo. And I want to see that. Look, I'll rip into him. If he picks an easy title defense, I'm going to fucking rip into him. But I hope that he can be brave. I hope he can be bold. And I hope he picks a big fight. All right? Probably not going to be Iglesias, if I'm being honest. I don't think he will. I think he'll pick a domestic opponent. I think he'll pick another Brit. But if I had to pick Iglesias or even Jakob Bank. I know Jakob Bank's untested, but I wouldn't mind it because Jakob Bank needs an opportunity to be tested. On August 15th at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, Clarissa Shields is going to be taking on Kay Scott for the WBC and WBA middleweight titles. Yeah, look, Clarissa Shields completed boxing and now she's playing the game again. She's like, all right, let's drop a few more divisions. Let's run through it again. And I think she beats Kay Scott. Canelo Alvarez versus Christian Billy has been pushed back. This fight will now be taking place late October in Riyadh, and it's apparently to avoid a clash with Ryan Garcia and Conor Benn. So is Canelo Alvarez now the B-side to Ryan Garcia and Conor Benn? It does sound that way, doesn't it? It does sound that way. Does Canelo Alvarez not sell anymore? Is that what we're seeing here? Look, I thought that we'd see Canelo Alvarez, Christian Billy on the same card as Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn. I thought that's what we would just see. Mega card, man. A mega card. But obviously, there's been a problem somewhere along the line. People aren't reaching agreements. To be fair, people are talking about this Ryan Garcia versus Conor Benn fight like it is confirmed. And up until now, it's not 100% solidified. I believe they're still negotiating terms. Canelo Alvarez versus Christian Billy, if that's the reason that they've been pushed back, so be it. When I first saw the announcement, I just gathered one of them got injured. But apparently not. Apparently, they're just rescheduling because Canelo Alvarez can't sell compared to Ryan Garcia, apparently, which I find astounding. I can't work it out. If I'm being honest, I can't work out why we're not seeing these on the same day or on the same card. Moments of the week. What has caught my eye in the world of combat sports this week? We're going to start with a TSA agent versus Dustin Poirier. And whatever Dustin Poirier is up to right now.
Man, fuck you and fuck her and fuck her. I'll fight you right now.
No, I don't want to fight, bro.
I'll go with you right now.
Bro, I don't want to fight, bro. I don't want to fight.
Let's go.
I don't want to fight.
Let's go.
Radio, have you
Yeah,
step
tell
it
him.
up.
Tell him, come on.
Get a couple of
Because it's going to be bad.
Bro, just
It's
step
going to be
up.
bad, my nigga.
No, bro.
Look, Dustin Poirier has made himself the newest meme of combat sports. And look, it's a lapse in judgment from Dustin Poirier. I don't doubt that Dustin Poirier is a top dude, a family guy, a great UFC fighter. And he's a guy that looks, and he's said it himself, that he's lost. And I thought taking the job, he does, panel work for the UFC. I thought, all right, he's found something. But we see this so many times with fighters when they retire, when they get injured, when they lose their way, stuff starts to fall apart. And I hope for Dustin Poirier that he can put it all back together. He can find something that he wants to do. But unfortunately, for the short term, he is the newest meme. Moza Taumer and Filip Hrgović have a heated exchange at a press conference.
Yeah, everybody predicting that he's the next big star in boxing. And I'm here to stop him, of course. I think my path was much harder, much harder. I work so hard to get into this position.
Whether he thinks my path is going to be easy or not, I mean, it don't do me no favors. At the end of the day, he's 14 years older than me and we're still in the same position. So they don't know nothing about me to comment.
Who got more will, more determination, more courage, more desire for win.
Jamal Hill is now an obese UFC fighter. Like, look at this photo. What the fuck is he doing? What is Jamal Hill doing? Is he trying to become a super heavy? Like, Alex Pereira became a heavyweight, put it all in his ass. And Jamal Hill's becoming a heavyweight and put it all in his stomach. Terence Crawford has been doing a lot of talking about Jaron Boots Ennis. Look, lots of it's been brought on by other people. Lots of people have been asking him questions. Are you still retired? Can we see Terence Crawford versus Jaron Boots Ennis? If Terence Crawford was to face Jaron Boots Ennis, who would win? And all of that nonsense. Look, for Terence Crawford, I like what he said.
I don't worry about coming back to prove anything, because me coming back and proving something to people that it doesn't matter, what never matters. For that being, they would say, oh, well, he only fought Xander, or they'll come up with some type of excuse, but to credit Boots, like, he's a tremendous talent and he's no walk in the park for no one.
And it's true, all right? If Terence Crawford goes in there and faces Jaron Boots Ennis and beats him, Jaron Boots Ennis wasn't tested. He's versus Ennis. Me. If he goes in there and loses it, all of a sudden that amazing resume, that amazing record, a bit like Alexander Usyk, goes down the drain. And for what? I don't think Bud needs to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to continuously fight the new lions. What, do you want him to be 60 and still fighting the young lion? No. Terence had his moment, and now it's time for Jaron to have his own moment. I don't think we have to compare. I don't think we have to say who's going to win. Obviously, there's a lot of backstory because of Jaron when he was at welterweight, when Terence was at welterweight. But I think we've all moved on, and I think it's time that Terence Crawford, he's a retired fighter, and I don't really want to see him coming out of retirement to take on Boots. Boots, you go pave your own legacy. There are some top guys in their prime right now. Go and face them. And finally, WBC have announced a July 4th inspired belt that will be fought for this weekend between Bruce Shushu Carrington and Rene Palios. All right, let's do our quick weekend review. Not much. All right, let's do our quick All right, let's quickly do our weekend preview. Not a lot of fights going on. Abdullah Mason versus Albert Bell. I think it's a very competitive fight still. Like I said, I don't think there's much of a drop-off from Albert Bell from Joe Cordino. I think he's still going to bring us. I think it's still going to be a very entertaining fight. Albert Bell isn't a tested, certified fighter like Joe Cordino. That's the problem. There is a lot of mystery behind what Albert Bell's going to bring. If he is what he's being promised to be, if he is a good fighter like he should be, like a guy that could go in there and beat Andy Cruz. Look, 28-0 is a difficult thing to get to. He's fought a lot of tin cans, but he's run through them. He's done what he had to do. It's not like he's struggling against them. This is a big test. Abdullah Mason, I'm intrigued to see how he's grown since that Sam Noakes victory. As a brutal fight, a tough fight, and I want to see that experience come through. But Albert Bell, look, he's untested, and that's the thing. He's a very untested fighter. You know what you were going to get from Joe Cordina, but I don't believe if it was Joe Cordina in the ring, he was going to beat Abdullah Mason. Albert Bell, we don't particularly know exactly what we're going to get from him, but it's intriguing, and I think he's got just as much chance if he performs the way that we think he might to compete against someone like Abdullah Mason. I still think Abdullah Mason wins the fight. I think Abdullah Mason probably gets a decision. He might get a late stoppage if Albert Bell has, if his record is that stat padded. All right, I've seen some of the guys he's fought. I've seen some of those fights. Look, they're not great. And Albert Bell should be winning. But this is a step up. And a lot of times when we see these step ups, they either strive or they plummet. And until they take that leap, we're not going to know. I still think Abdullah Mason's going to win. Look, the safe bet is Abdullah Mason. Finally, Bruce Shushu Carrington and Rene Palios. It's not the fight I want to see Bruce in. I think Shushu runs through Rene Palios. I think he actually stops Palios. For me, Shushu is a top fighter in the division. I want to see him unifying. I want to see him take on Brendan Figueroa. That's the fight I want to see. If he beats Rene Palios, like I think he will, I think he'll actually run through him. I'd be surprised if it was a close decision. I think it's either a stoppage or a very wide decision. I want to see him in one of those big fights, and I want it to be Brendan Figueroa. And that is about all of the action from this weekend. Not a lot going on. So if you are new, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. It does help a massive amount. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of anything we spoke about today. What are your predictions for these fights? What do you think of the breaking news? And what were your reactions to the fights from last weekend? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe. I'm out here, guys. See ya.